All right, here we are. How's it going, Charlie?
Going good. How about you, Miguel?
It's going well. Welcome, everyone, to The Future Belongs to Creators. I am Miguel, as the name under the words under my face say. If you're on the podcast, my name is under my face. Okay. So, anyways,
Audio description done. Yeah.
yeah, good. So I'm excited about today. You might have noticed that Haley isn't here today. She is having some. She's in a loud environment, I guess, which is not conducive to something like this. So
Nope.
we'll see her next week, I'm sure.
Yes.
But I just wanted to talk with Charlie today about kind of the ins and outs, we'll say, of running a newsletter. So the reason I wanted to talk to Charlie about this today is because she is no stranger to a newsletter. She's apparently published a few, right? So
the story goes. Yeah.
So the story goes. Something like 20-something issues of your current newsletter, right? So
yes, of the current iteration. I feel like I've had varying, newsletters over the right now. I run a newsletter called the Marketing Design Dispatch. And it's a weekly newsletter about marketing design. Quite a niche topic. There's a lot of people on my list who aren't marketing designers, and they still seem to enjoy it though, so that's nice. But yeah, I'm just in issue 22, went out this Monday of the Dispatch.
That's fantastic. Cool. Yeah, I kind of like that that you're kind of sticking to doing it for a niche audience. I think it's like it's two sides, right? So obviously the people that are interested in it, but you might reel a few people in that may not realize that they're interested in it, but you're kind of introducing them because they like you, obviously.
Yes. That sneakily what I wanted to do with this newsletter, and why when I started it, I just started sending it out to my whole email list. which, that's made up of, I think I have about 24,000 people on my email list right now. And that's people who've signed up for varying different reasons, and varying different
Mhm.
opt-in forms and things over the years. But my point is that they didn't all sign up specifically to receive this newsletter. I just started sending it to them. But I did give everyone an out. Like I have a custom opt-out link in every newsletter that says, like, if you want to stay on the list, but you don't want to receive these emails, then you can. So I send it to a segment of everyone but the people who have opted out. But yeah, it's my reason for starting it is actually because I'm writing a book about marketing design that I think I've talked about before on the show. And I just realized that having a newsletter on this topic would be a really prime thing for me to start doing to build up a reputation in this area, right? So that when my book comes out, there's a bunch of people who have perhaps learned a little something from me about marketing design along the way and might be more interested in buying the book than if I had never sent them anything to do with marketing design before, right? So
Yeah.
that's partly why I did it.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I like the idea of kind of I feel like it helps you establish yourself as kind of like an authority on a
Mm,
topic. So like when something goes out, like say a book or like a something you've put a lot of work into, you're kind of priming your audience with a little bit of that ahead of time, and then it kind of like whets their appetite for something like really big, like a book or something like that.
yeah. And it's been fun for me as I've been writing this book, I've been sharing snippets of things that I've been writing for the book in the newsletter, essentially.
Mm.
My newsletter is part like article, I guess, and part roundup of resources or like interesting things that are happening in design. And sometimes for the article part of the newsletter, I will send out like the intro I wrote to a chapter of the book, for example. And it's been really fun for me to see the response when I do that. Like it's just so encouraging when people reply to one of those newsletters and they're like, oh, I really liked this, or like I related to this part. I'm like, good. I'm on the right track with the book then if you enjoyed that.
I was just about to ask. I was going to say, are you resisting the temptation to use this as a way of like trying out ideas for your book, or is it
Oh,
just
I'm
a
not
kind of a
resisting
great
it at
tool?
all. No,
No.
yeah.
Okay.
I'm leaning well into it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I can only imagine that's going to make for a better book.
I
Seeing
hope
how
so.
people
Yeah.
kind of getting like it's a way of like testing the waters with an idea
Hmm.
or a topic and just kind of seeing maybe they'll even help you think of things that you didn't even consider to put in your book. But somebody asks a question, you're like, oh, wait, yeah, I didn't think of that. So,
That kind of has happened in the replies. People like, I don't know, maybe the thing that stuck out to them was something that was just like a passing comment for me, but for them it was like a really key point and that really like made them think of something. I'm like, oh, okay, interesting. I should make sure I lean into that more in the book or expand on it or whatever. Yeah, it's sort of like focus grouping. When I do get replies, I'm trying to encourage more replies. I don't get as many as I like. And I think that's because I send this newsletter out using a template,
mhm.
with a design. And we know at ConvertKit that if you send out a plainer text email, it's going to feel more personal and it's more likely to get a response, perhaps, than one with the whole design around it. But I just felt like I wanted to use an email template with a design to brand it in a way, and to give it
Mhm.
that feel like this is a complete thing, and yeah, build up the brand for the newsletter.
Also, it kind of makes me smile a little bit if, you consider the topic where it's marketing
Good point. Yep.
design, and then you send out an email that looks like somebody's like slapped it together on Word or something like that and just sent it out. They'd be like, is this person
Great point.
really knows what they're doing? Is that Comic Sans? I don't no, just kidding.
I would never. You know me, Miguel.
I know that. I know that. Just kidding. That's funny. Yeah. No, I constantly kind of ping pong back and forth because I know we always tell people that, engagement is helped by a simpler email that looks like it was sent from someone that
Mhm.
as opposed to like this sort of like great thing with like tons of pictures and links everywhere. And like it's just this mess. So, like finding some sort of like a sweet spot between something that's personal, but also that looks good and if it's a newsletter and it's constantly coming out all the time, and I subscribe to newsletters as well, and eventually you get used to the design, and there are certain parts of the newsletter that you kind of gravitate to. Like, this is the
Mhm.
section where I normally get the bulk of the things that I'm interested in, so I'll scroll straight to it, and I kind of like know my way around, as opposed to like reading this thing to cover like a book. You know?
Yeah. It's sort of like it's a mini website in your inbox, right? That's what
Yeah.
emails with design templates are, essentially. Yeah.
Which is a fraught idea, because I will say sometimes people write in to us and say, "Hey, I'm trying to add all these videos and stuff to my email, and I'm trying to like," I'm like, "You're building an entire website in an email, and this thing is
Mhm.
going to
Mhm.
explode
Yep.
if it
Yep.
tries to go to anybody's inbox." It's insane, you know. So it's funny because there's constantly this marriage of we're pushing the envelope with what we can do with emails, because people are so used to surfing the web now, and they're so used to seeing content a certain way that emails keep kind of bumping into that. And how can we
Mm.
make this email basically a web page that gets delivered into an inbox? So yeah,
Yeah.
anyhow, I digress. So speaking of newsletters in general, I know that this is something that's been kind of more and more of a thing, and we've had a topic on this in the past on our podcast. We've talked about newsletters, but just real quick, I wanted to talk about how you decide what to put in a newsletter. Is everything
Mm.
newsletter worthy? I know sometimes it can be like a digest of several different things, or if there's different sections that are maybe several topics that don't have anything to do with each other. So how do you like craft a good newsletter?
Yeah.
You.
I think the best newsletters for me so far, and by best, I'm judging as the ones that I got responses to. You know, the ones that people went out of their way to say, I really enjoyed this newsletter. That's a good newsletter if someone bothered to respond and tell you that or to tweet about it or whatever. I've noticed the best ones have a theme to them. So, for example, I did one about how actually I do think designers should learn to code. Hot take. And there was like a little article-y piece, because that's what I said I like to start my newsletter with, is more of a, it's not too long, but longer form piece about on the topic. And then there was resources for learning to code that I shared in the sort of roundup section. And that got a good response. The other day I actually also did one that I wasn't sure how it was going to go down, but I'd been on vacation and I had not written my newsletter for the following week. And it was Sunday, last day of my vacation. I was like, I have not been paying attention to anything in marketing design world for the past week. What am I going to write about in this newsletter? And so
Hmm.
instead, I decided to write about how important it is for your creativity to be taking breaks and recharging. And I shared some of my favorite things to do that are nothing to do with design. Like I shared a Star Wars ebook. I shared a bloody face mask. There was like a bunch of stuff in there that wasn't to do with design. But it got a really good response. People were like, "Oh, I loved this. Like, I loved you thinking about creativity in this way of recharging it, and it was nice to see how you're spending your time, and like nice to know you outside of design." Oh, thanks. Teddy just said that was the best one yet. So thanks, Teddy. I appreciate you. Yeah, that sort of thing. When there's been a theme to it, I feel like they've done well. When it's
Mhm.
rather than when it's sort of like more of a random hodgepodge of recommendations. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess you've learned your lesson. You have to have more Star Wars content at all
Yes, that is
times.
the lesson from this.
Yeah. If you take nothing else.
Yes.
Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of, sometimes when you're just trying to force something and you're like, this happens to me sometimes when we're thinking about like topics of what to talk about on this podcast, or
Right.
what we're going to do, within my team at ConvertKit, when we're going to have a meeting or something like that. And I'm trying to think of what I want to focus on. Um, Sometimes it's just kind of, I kind of take it at surface value as like, well, instead of trying to force something, maybe this is a great opportunity to kind of back away from the normal way that I think, and sort of have a little bit more fun with it and see how that goes, and just kind of like try out new stuff. And because otherwise you just, I don't know, you just kind of end up, I don't like what comes out of me whenever I like force creativity. It's never
Mm,
satisfying, or hardly ever satisfying.
yeah.
So yeah,
And
I
that's one
totally
of
see that.
the hardest parts of running a weekly newsletter is every single week you need content to send out to your list, right? There's been
Mhm.
some weeks that I've skipped. Like I skipped my birthday week. I was like, I don't want to write a newsletter on my birthday, so I'm not going to. Sometimes I make up excuses for myself.
Sure.
But I did that because I would rather have skipped it than put out something subpar. But I do
Mhm.
know also that consistency is really important in a newsletter. And so you want to get out content every week as much as you can. Something that I've been doing to try and combat this is actually having guest edited issues where I don't write it. I invite a designer friend of mine on to write
Ooh.
the instead. And it's a chance for me to share my platform with them. I think having an email list the size that I do, there's a bit of, that's a good value to someone to spend their time writing to. I can get them in front of my audience. And so that's what I've been doing once a month. I've been trying to have a guest issue this year, and honestly has not saved as much time as I thought because it's still me coordinating it all and I've still got to write the introduction. But it's been fun that's at least one that I don't have to think of the theme of. I'm handing it off to someone else to do the bulk of that and then putting them in front of my audience.
Yeah, when you first start out, you're like, all right, here's a topic that was easy. Here's a topic that was easy. And then like you get into like issue 10, 11, and 12, and you're like really kind of scraping and you're like, uh-oh,
Yep.
this maybe the weekly thing was a bad idea.
Yeah.
Maybe this should be monthly. Uh-oh. So I hear you.
Yep.
That's funny. I so when you're speaking of, coming up with the content and stuff, when
Mhm.
you're creating something, I know there's obviously a newsletter on some level is promotional
Mhm.
in some level. So, but how do you kind of strike a balance between your educational content as opposed or like the stuff that really brings value to people, and then like kind of your pitch, like the thing
Mm.
that you might want to be trying to use to convert some of your audience?
Yeah, that's definitely been something I've been wary of. And honestly, part of the reason for starting this newsletter is so that I'm not just emailing my list when I have some action I want them to take, right?
Mm,
I'm giving them value weekly so that hopefully when I do have the thing to pitch, they're more interested in it and they don't feel like they're just being sold to, because that's obviously not what I'm trying to do. Um, I like what I would be pitching in my emails, I guess, is my own video content, like trying to drive views to that. I also have my digital product, Grayscale, as a font that I've made. I think I've mentioned it in 2 newsletters so far. I hope I'm not wrong on that, but I think it's just been in 2. And then obviously, eventually, when I have my book, I'll be pitching that in the newsletter as well. And I think it's mostly gut feel in that I don't want every single newsletter to have a pitch for something.
yeah.
And I definitely don't want the sole focus of the newsletter just to be pitching something. So if I'm including one of my own videos in it, for example, it's just one of the resources, and there's other things in there as well that people could choose to go to instead. Same with if I'm pitching my font. It's not just about the font. It's one of the resources as part of the newsletter. That's what I've encouraged my guests to do as well, is like, look, this is for you to get in front of my audience and like, I don't know, get attention on something that you want to promote, but you need to be promoting other stuff as well. And so usually my guests will promote either their podcast or their YouTube channel as one of the resources that they're sharing with my audience on a certain theme. And that's worked out well so far, I think, anyway. I don't think anyone's felt sold to in my newsletter. And maybe I'm even being overly cautious about it. I don't know. But I feel like I do worry about that sort of thing as a creator, not wanting to feel like I'm selling out.
Yeah, because you know how that feels,
Yeah.
obviously, when you're getting bombarded, when you sign up for
Mhm.
an email newsletter and you're a week in and you get like 2 or 3 things in your inbox a day, you're like, all right, buddy,
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Chill
go ahead
out.
and
Yeah.
unsubscribe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially it wouldn't even be that bad if it wasn't like every single email is trying to get me back on to spend money or
Mm.
something like that, you
Mhm.
know?
Mhm.
So that's obviously very tiresome. So, yeah. So that was I was going to ask you about that too. Is it's obviously a weekly newsletter.
Yep.
So how do you arrive at doing a weekly newsletter because that's how often you want to put time into something like this? Do you feel like that's a good interval to if it's, is that like the ideal interval for you to be able to collect enough content so that it's valuable? Like, why a week? Why not monthly? Why not?
Mm.
Like, why do we decide these intervals? I mean, obviously, a newsletter is something that comes at a regular interval, but
I think weekly makes sense for a newsletter for me. I think monthly could also make sense, but I could see myself actually switching to monthly further on down the track. But I
mhm.
feel like if I was only doing one a month, it feels more pressure for some reason. Like it feels like there's only one of these every month. I mean, there's
Oh,
only 12 a
good
year,
point.
so they better be fucking good, you know. I used our F bomb for the episode.
Well,
Um,
there we go,
sorry, you can't use one now.
man.
Yeah, I don't know. There's just something about weekly. It feels like because another reason I wanted to do it is to comment on the happenings in the design industry as well, and like be timely about it. So I'm trying to think of an example where I did this. I can't think of one from the past, but what I know next week's newsletter is going to be is about some new features that Figma, which is a design tool, are launching at their conference that starts today and is going for the rest of the work week. I know that Monday's newsletter will be sort of like my thoughts on those features. Maybe it'll be a critique of a marketing page they've designed about those features. Well, that's right. I did one about an Apple marketing page when they launched a product. Is a way to be timely with content for me. So that's why weekly.
Okay. Yeah. I've been kind of thinking more seriously about just kind of trying my hand at a newsletter. Not that I have much of a list
Cool.
or any list really at all,
Well,
but
this could be how you grow one, right?
right, exactly. And I mean, I'm definitely not getting anywhere by doing nothing. So
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of feel like this I have nothing to lose kind of a mentality. And I think the goal for me isn't necessarily to grow my audience. I think my goal is to grow my comfort level with
Mm.
doing this and like my ability to kind of like keep up a regular interval and for it to be up to par with what I consider to be valuable. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm kind of thinking I'm between a weekly and monthly.
Mm.
I think for to start off, I want to do weekly just so I can have that repetition and kind of gain the
Yep.
skill.
Get the reps
And
in.
then,
Yeah.
like you were saying, maybe back off over time if I feel like that's necessary. Or I'm not, I'm not sure yet. But
Well,
um,
this is the thing is that I think that a weekly newsletter is as valuable for you as the writer as it is for the audience because it's building the habit, right? It's the habit of creating, the
yeah,
habit of writing, the habit of commitment as well, of committing to saying like I'm going to do this thing for my audience every single week and then showing up and doing it. I think that's a really good promise to make to yourself as well as it is to your audience for sure. By the way, if anyone listening right now live, sorry for people who are listening after the fact, has a question about newsletters or anything like this, please drop it in the chat because we can for sure dig in and answer it. I thought, Miguel, I could try and share my screen and show my
let's do
newsletter
this.
like landing page and some stuff of like, I don't know, just the like nerdy technical details maybe.
Yeah,
What do you think? Yeah? Shall I do
let's do it. We'll do our best for our audio listeners
it? Describe what's
to
on the page.
to describe what's going on.
Okay, sounds good. I'm just opening up, yep, this as well. Okay. Let me figure out how we share the screen here. Sharing a screen, choosing a tab.
Boy, this is
Uh,
involved.
okay.
You did it.
Hopefully you should be seeing a screen now.
No,
Cool.
I see the screen.
Great. So this is my landing page for Marketing Design Dispatch, made with ConvertKit, of course. You are listening to a
Okay.
ConvertKit podcast. We're not going to not talk about it. um, so it has like a little. This is the logo that appears on the email template as well. So that's trying to create some familiarity there between
Mhm.
the page and what you see in the email. And then a little description of it. I've used our newsletter feed feature to always add the latest issue. So this updates itself automatically. I'm not having to come into the page and be like, oh, this was my latest issue or whatever.
I love that.
This is just selecting the public feed option inside ConvertKit. And yeah, it shows up here, whichever the latest one is. And I like this because it means that people can get a glimpse of what the content is of the newsletter before they subscribe. So it can like get them interested in
Yeah.
it, you know? And then, yeah, I really like that. I think that everyone wants to try before they buy, right? And this is a good way to do that. And yeah, then it's just the
Yeah.
sign up and my social links. Super simple page that's just my brand. Like I said, I send my email newsletter out to everybody on my list, but this is the specific place I send people when I'm like, oh, you want to join my newsletter list. This is where they can come to. Yeah.
And is a newsletter something that everyone should do? Is this like a
Ooh.
no-brainer situation, or is there an instance where maybe it's not the right choice?
Hmm.
That's what I'm thinking
Good
about.
question. I'd like to know what you think of that. What do you think? Because you're toying with this idea right now. Why would or wouldn't you start one?
Well, that's why I'm asking. Actually, I'm
Okay,
asking.
because you're trying to
I'm
figure it out for
asking
yourself.
for me
Yep, yep.
because so my thing is I kind of want to take the work that I'm doing, designing and building things out of wood, and possibly doing like a wood design kind of thing where you can
Mhm.
I offer like free plans for certain things. And then, like, I don't know if I can take it deeper by offering extra plans. And that's kind of like how I kind of convert my audience, or if the conversion would be showing you step by step on how to build it. Like, here are the plans, go nuts. But if you want
Right.
me to walk you through it, well, then that's what you pay for.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that has to do with like sort of like this interval of news, like unless there's a new design or something that I'm
Mm.
putting out, like I don't know what else I'm talking about. Does it make sense to talk about woodworking at large? Maybe not necessarily specific to me, but just kind of creating a space to talk about like DIY and why it makes sense, or you know, stuff like that. Like, yeah, I sell plants, but like, let's talk about why you would build a table instead of buy one. Like, why
Mm.
bother? You know, or like,
Yeah.
is it because it's cheaper? Sometimes, but not always. Sometimes it's more
Sometimes it
expensive
costs more,
than
especially
just
when you factor in your time.
right. Exactly. So is
Yep.
time part of the cost? I mean, if you're just adding up the cost of the wood and the screws and the glue, okay, well, maybe it's cheaper. But if I spend an entire weekend on this, would it have been better just to go to IKEA and spend 150 bucks and call it a day? You know what I
It's
mean?
probably
So
never really the answer, but I think, Miguel, where you start is who are you writing to? For me, my audience and my ideal like reader is someone like myself, especially probably someone like myself a few years earlier in my career is who I'm always trying to talk to and who I'm trying to help. Um, and I think you could think about it that way and ask yourself, like, okay, if another woodworker did this, what content would I want to see from them in a newsletter? And
mm,
you can write that kind of content. Um, I think you'd be surprised at how people are definitely interested in the woodworking at large, or insert your topic here at large thing, and not just specifically the like functional. Here is your plan. People would be interested in your thoughts on topics and what you're seeing and what you think matters, and your opinion on subjects that are related to it. So I think you should do it, and I think that you can sort of lean into whatever you're thinking about at the moment, right? Like if you're working on a new plan, then you can talk about that. If it's more, yeah, the thinking of this project and how it's held up over time, that could be another idea. But I think you should do it. I think that everyone has the capability of running a newsletter because we all have thoughts on things and we're all thinking about stuff a lot of the time, and it's good writing practice. It's essentially like having a blog that you deliver directly to people's inboxes instead of them coming to your website, right? That's another way to possibly think of it.
yeah, I try to remind myself that it's easy to get discouraged if I put a lot of effort into, say, writing a newsletter or creating a
Hmm.
YouTube video or putting together a plan. And maybe nobody buys the plan or nobody opens
Mm,
the email or whatever. And I try to remind myself that the point isn't for that specific effort to succeed, but rather to build my catalog to the
mm,
point where somebody might show up. And sure, if you come to my page and I have two videos, you might be like, eh. But if you come to my page and I've been cranking these out for a while and there's like a backlog, then my page has value that I've added over time. It's not just what I did this week. So I'm not thinking about it in terms of I'm just going to try and see how this does because it's
Yeah.
probably not going to do well. Not the first attempt.
No.
I mean, if I'm
No.
being serious, like the
Yep.
chances of me doing one YouTube video and that exploding are probably not realistic. So I'm just trying to think of like when I randomly go on YouTube and I'm like, okay, I want to learn how to do this with wood. I don't know how. I find some how to and sometimes it's some random like 50-year-old guy whose son was holding up a camcorder and
Aw.
they taught me what I needed to know, but wasn't great to like as
Mhm,
a
mhm.
viewer. It wasn't the production value wasn't awesome. But there are ones out there where like I go for the technique and I stay for the person,
Yes,
you know,
exactly. And I think it's
because
the same for a newsletter. People come for the topic and stay for the writer, the person behind the newsletter.
yeah, because
Yeah.
then you get their brand on
Mhm.
whatever it is that they're teaching you, you know? Then I'm watching videos on things I already know how to do, but I'm just like, I wanna see what this guy thinks about it. I wanna see what this person, how they do it, or sometimes it's just entertaining and I'll just watch it while I'm eating lunch because they're just fun to watch, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, "Oh, yeah, I already know how to do this, but this person's hilarious," or whatever,
Mhm.
so
Yep, and the same might be true of a newsletter, that the topic that it is, someone's like, "I already know how this." I don't know, like, for in my example, someone might be like, "I already know how to research a brand competitor," which was the topic of last week's newsletter. But they might read mine just to see how I approach it, to enjoy the writing as well is a possibility. Yeah.
Well, yeah, like you
What else?
said, you sent it out to people that may not necessarily be interested in what the
Yep.
newsletter's about, but they like they like Charlie.
Mhm.
So
I will say that, this is probably not the recommended way to, like, clean your email list, but I think I've found that, every email I send gets, like, it gets a good amount of unsubscribes as well, like, maybe 60 people will unsubscribe each time I send out an email. I'm sending it to, like, over 20,000, so that's probably not that bad.
mhm.
Um, but I'm like, I don't know. It started when I first sent it out. I was like, oh no, am I doing the wrong thing? Like, I'm losing so many subscribers from my email list by sending out these newsletters, because previously I wasn't sending much at all to my list. But then I realized, no, it's just people opting out of the type of content they want to see. Maybe they signed up for my screen printing opt in, and that's all they wanted from me. They don't give a shit about the design side, so they're going to leave, and that's fine, right?
Yeah.
It's fine for your email list to sort of like cycle itself, and for people to opt out themselves from receiving your content.
If anything, I think that's probably a good sign of a healthy list.
Yeah.
You know,
Okay, making me
that's
feel better about it.
yeah. Well, no, seriously though. I mean, you know, people come and go and their interests may
Mhm.
change. They may have just, been there for that one sort of incentive that you were offering and they got what they want and they're out of there and that's fine too. But
Yeah.
um, I mean, it shouldn't have any bearing on what you're doing really. It's just like if you think about your newsletter as like a brick and mortar place, sometimes people go into a store and they leave without buying anything. That's
That's true.
okay.
Yep, that's
Um,
absolutely true.
they
Or they
still
just look in the
hopefully
window even.
yeah, yeah, and then, but they still might remember that you're there, and
Mhm.
the day might come where they're like, "Wait a minute, I remember this thing in this one place. Let me go back there." Or maybe they might refer someone else to you. So it's I don't know. I don't think it's necessarily a loss if people come and go. So
Yep. Yep. Yeah, agreed. And Alyssa, our deliverability expert as well, commented and says that unsubscribes are good, makes it better for deliverability if you keep your list high quality, just the people who want to be there. So thanks. Great, Alyssa. Awesome. I feel better about my unsubscribes now.
yeah, there you
Thank you
go.
to you both.
Everyone's coming
Yeah.
out of the woodwork to make you feel better about your
Yeah.
unsubscribe.
It's about my unsubscribes. Um, Something else I think I want to share that I didn't really think about before starting the newsletter is the system management of it. So I have like a Notion workspace where each issue is its own page in Notion, so that I can jot down ideas for like topics for future issues and collate things throughout the week, as I see them that I think about. I just wanted to share that as a tip because it's worked really well for me, is having that one space to go to curate each issue, so that I'm capturing ideas in the moment and not just like sitting down and being like, what am I going to write about today? It's like my past self did a bit of the work for me.
That's a great tip. I was wondering, you mentioned earlier um, that you've done other newsletters in the past.
Yep.
So when starting this one 22 issues ago,
Hmm.
what did you want to do differently with this one,
Mm.
so it wasn't just like, oh, I'm just doing this again, but
Yep. Yep.
cutting and pasting a different topic. So what did you learn from your previous iterations um, that kind of helped you in your current newsletter?
Yeah, this is a great question. So my previous main newsletter that I did was many years ago now, and it was just like stuff that I was liking or enjoying that week. It was like roundup style, which my current one is too, but it was roundup without a theme, and it was always roundup. And I just found myself some weeks scraping the bottom of the barrel for stuff to include. And I don't know, adding things that I didn't really care about that much, but I needed to have 2 videos in every single newsletter because that's the like space that I had set aside for it. Um, and so I really wanted with this newsletter both to have more focus, but also more flexibility. So the more focus comes in from me on the theme being it is the marketing design dispatch. This is who it's for. I'm like just going to lean into that niche. Whereas previously it was sort of like my YouTube channel used to be. It was a bit of design, a bit of DIY, a bit of lifestyle, less of a focus. And then the more flexibility comes in to however I feel like formatting the newsletter that week, I will. There's been some weeks where I think I've just sent out sort of like a long form article as the newsletter. And that's been what people got that week because that's what I felt like it needed to be. Other weeks, it's been like I've done a job roundup one before, collating a bunch of different marketing design jobs in the industry that I thought looked interesting. That's what people got
That's
that
cool.
week. Yeah, so just like having that freedom to be flexible and act on ideas like that, rather than it being a constantly defined format. Like there's always going to be a video, a podcast, and a long form thing. I kind of go back and forth on that because I think, like you said before, that there's newsletters you subscribe to where you know what content you're going to get and you know to scroll to that section. I think there's a lot of value in that, in the consistency of it, and that's probably more valuable for the reader than my way of doing things, where it's like it's a bit random. But for me, as the writer, for the sustainability aspect of it, to keep up the consistency, I needed that flexibility. And so I'm giving it to myself because I would rather have a newsletter that keeps going and is a little bit more flexible in terms of the content than to have it be too structured and for me to feel boxed in and trapped by it.
I love that. I like that you're giving yourself space to kind of mess around with it a little bit, but
Yeah.
I love that you're also stressing the focus of it so you kind of don't get too all over the place. And I like that you're really leaning into that marketing design niche. Um, I think some people might feel tempted to be very general with the things that they're saying to cast the widest net possible.
Hmm.
But I feel like that tends to be less valuable and it tends to alienate the people that are reading your emails and your newsletters because, you know, general stuff you can find anywhere with a simple Google, the
Hmm.
real nitty gritty stuff, you really kind of have to like dig down and try and find people that are talking about it. So yeah, I
I
I
think
like
people
that.
shouldn't be afraid to niche down for that reason. Because, like, when I think about myself as a designer and who I learn from, a lot of the things that I learn in the industry come from not fellow marketing designers, but from UX designers or, product designers, different types of design. Um, and so I know that my newsletter, the people who read it, aren't all marketing designers. In fact, probably a very small portion of them actually are because it's not super common as a role. But I know that people from UX, from product, from graphic design, whatever, they can still learn a lot from the things that are important to marketing designers. And so, the just think about your own learning habits, I guess. You don't only go to people who are doing exactly the thing you do to learn. We take inspiration and learning from a lot of different places. And so my newsletter is just one source, I guess, of places people to learn from. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Something I want to shout out, and I'm going to try and share my screen again, and it's going
Oh,
to
here
not
we
take as
go.
long as it did last time. Just you wait. Okay, here we go.
That was quick.
Yeah, it was quick.
Nice
This
job.
is a new challenge that we're running at ConvertKit. It just launched this week. So if you're listening to this podcast in the next couple of weeks, head to convertkit.com/challenge and check out the page. But it's a paid newsletter challenge. Bringing this up because it's something I've thought about doing is having a paid version of my newsletter where it's essentially the same thing, just it gives people the option to pay for the content if they have like, I don't know, a team budget that can pay for training and stuff like that, or they just want to treat it more like a kind of like a Patreon thing where they can pay to receive the content, like a tip, I guess. I've thought about doing that. I can't take part in this challenge because I work for ConvertKit, but if you don't, you can. What we're doing is giving a bonus to anyone who generates subscription revenue and meets these milestones in May. So if you reach $100 in subscription revenue from a paid newsletter, we're going to send you a $25 bonus. If you reach a $5,000 revenue milestone, we'll give you an extra $500, and you get all the previous ones as well. There's a table on the website to look at. But yeah, basically, if you've thought about starting a paid newsletter, you should do it in May so that you can take advantage of this, is what I'm saying. Check it out, convertkit.com/challenge.
Yeah, I mean, why the hell not, right? I mean,
exactly, Miguel.
best case scenario, you make some money. Worst case scenario, you learn a lot about how to do a newsletter and what you don't want to do with a newsletter. So
yeah, exactly. Give it a try.
fuck it.
That
There,
is
I
my
said
message.
Oh
no, we
Do
used
it.
2 F-bombs in the same
no,
episode.
no, this is a rated R episode.
Yep, already,
damn it.
for sure. Well, thanks, Miguel, for all your great questions today. Do you feel like coming out of this, like, where are you standing now on starting a newsletter of your own? How are you closer to doing it or closer
I think
to not doing it?
I'm definitely closer, and I'm not just saying that.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to kind of flex that muscle a little bit and just give it a shot. And I don't think there's any scenario where it's not valuable to at least try. So I'm gonna give it a go.
Awesome. Okay, so
And make all my family and friends subscribe to it.
yes.
I'm just kidding.
I was just going to say, let me know when you got your landing page up so that I can subscribe.
Yeah, all right.
Good. Cool.
And then I'll just make you give me pointers. So
yeah, okay, deal. I mean, that's what we do here,
cool.
right? Maybe we can give you pointers live on the show so that everyone else can benefit from it as well.
That's okay. Nope, that's all right. We're not there yet.
Okay.
Once I'm a resounding success, then you can ask me all the questions.
Okay. I disagree with that approach, but we'll revisit at a later date.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next week with Haley, I hope.
Hopefully. See you then.
Bye-bye.
Bye.